Hello and welcome to Creative Leaders at the House. I'm Gianluca Cinquepalmi. I'm your host for this wonderful podcast hosted at Soho House in Hong Kong with a live audience. And as the world becomes increasingly more complex and hard to navigate, I believe we need creatives and leaders that help us to inspire us, challenge us, and disrupt the status quo. I'm Gianluca Cinquepalmi. I'm an educator, design entrepreneur, and author, and I'm also the founder of creativeleaders.com. And today we are going to talk about the Dream Factory with actor, director, writer, and tech author Derek Ting. Ciao, Derek. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I know you're kicking this off here, so hello.
So, thank you because you were a familiar face, but also a super interesting person to discover more about how do you transition from also a standard, we say conventional career into a totally different aspect. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey into becoming what you are today?
Yeah, I'm from New York. I went to Cornell. I studied statistics. I worked in New York City at Mercer Consulting, the actuarial track, if anybody knows what that is. And after a year, I realized that I wasn't as good at probability and statistics and taking those tests. I actually switched into technology and I worked for a company called DoubleClick, and that
Okay.
eventually became Google.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that one.
yeah, I was employee number 500, went to 1500, got bought out, but I left before our three rounds of layoffs. And I was in New York City for 9/11, and that kind of changed my mindset and in what I wanted to do. And I always had a passion for acting from, especially since college. I took an
Okay.
acting class in college and loved it. Took theater. It's one of those last years where you get to explore. And so I just took steps to first explore what acting was like. And then I realized, oh, there's an opportunity to write, and and making your own stuff is really the way to go and create. These is early days before YouTube. And I made short films with my friends on DV tape. And honestly, I gave up acting.
Okay.
And yeah, so what happened was I'm a trailing spouse. You met my wife, and she got a job offer for Hong Kong. So I was like, oh, this is a time for me to see if I can make this
Okay.
acting thing work. And I went to LA for 2 weeks, and then I was in Hong Kong. And in Hong Kong, after just a month, I got a job at CNN as a producer.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I quit acting and I got into that, but I realized I moved halfway around the world. So news is great and journalism is great, but it wasn't what I ultimately wanted to do. So during maybe a year after CNN, I quit, left for a quote unquote easier job, and started writing my first feature film script. And after 6 years, nights and weekends grinding, I was able to raise the money, cast it, produce it, and release it US nationwide and globally. It's called Super Capitalist, and it was released by Warner Brothers. And then since then, it's let it come to me. So we've made 5 feature films and directed commercials. I have a podcast. So I just do a lot of things that just interest me.
When I was researching you as well, in the sense of looking at your feature film, why you have this, if I may say, obsession with this dystopian sci-fi meets real reality? What is in that space? And also your podcast, you talk about.
Yeah. I think as a creator, one of the things about movies is the timeline can be very long if you're not careful. So a lot
Okay.
of what you watch that I've released is an expression of how I felt at the time when I was writing
Okay.
it. Super Capitalist, for example, I lived the 05, 06, 07 kind of era of Hong Kong where it was like everyone's moving here and everyone's living that dream and the harsh reality behind that. And then it just happened that the financial crisis hit, and movies like Arbitrage, Margin Call came out. So I hit that trend, but then it moved on to Always, which was a romance drama. Can I do a character study? Right. And that was because I heard my friend told me his story, and it really made me research what the Chinese woman, the becoming the heir to a lot of this wealth. And so I was looking at the one child policy and what that would be like, and then just condense the message into a love story. But so now I have a trilogy, a sci-fi trilogy that started from nothing.
Okay.
And honestly, it was it was like me and Joyce were in Arizona, and this is really the inception of this. And I was telling one of my friends I'd never fired a weapon before. And
Okay.
he's like, I can change. We're in Arizona, so I was like, I can change that. So we went out to the desert and we fired like all these different types of weapons, pistols, snipers, rifles, and all that. And it just caught my eye as, oh, that's what could happen out here. And I always love sci-fi and always love action. So I was like, oh, this is actually possible. This is actually something I could film on a budget that I could execute. It's all about, a lot of times it's about execution and what you're trying to accomplish. That's really where it went down. And I like those things. And I like drama. Probably the reference for that one was Walking Dead, where I love the first two seasons. I love the relationship between John Barenthal and the guy who plays Rick Grimes. They're kind of like different side views of how you should live your life in an apocalypse.
Yeah.
If you actually watch that movie, you'll see essences of that. You'll see essences of the election in the US, which I won't comment on, but you'll see like those things. And it has just evolved over time. Like all my movies have been like how I feel. Yeah.
When we actually touched on this as we were preparing for this show, how movies or the movie industry is changing drastically in the past few years. And I thought about our conversation, and I wanted to ask you, movies in a way back in the day, they were always about either generating wonder, so any movie that was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna bring my audience in this whimsical, magical place, either be reflective or inspiring,
Yeah.
and or in a way also, like many artistic endeavor, I would say a commentary of what's happening or what happened.
Yeah.
And lately, and we talked about this,
Yeah.
we are seeing a lot of what I call transactional movies now. So movies that are made just for the box office, or I made this joke in my note, Mission Impossible 78. So all these franchise, they're going on and on and on just because they have a glimpse of what people might like. What's your take on that? And then I have a follow-up question on this one that is hard.
It is a very big macro question, but I think, are we writing for the algorithm? Is it like someone's attention is just 5 seconds, and do you need to really engage someone that way? So that's part of the reason why I've stayed independent. I think also we talked about career transition, and the reason why I did it was because I tried the audition process and I was like, if I put all my effort and time into recording something for somebody, and sometimes I still do this, I do get work that way, I only selectively choose those things. But prior, I would just do everything, and that was ultimately consuming. Yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was fully intentional. I think along the way, after you make your first movie, or you've made your first short film, or you've made your first YouTube, or you ask yourself, okay, I've done that, but what is it? Why am I doing this? Do I want to be on this hamster wheel? I scroll through these things, and I'm like, oh, that's the same guy saying the same thing. And then I'm like, does that guy feel that same way too? That he's saying the same messages and he's repeating himself and he's finding these different ways to get your attention. It's a constant struggle to stay sustainable and hold true to my integrity as an artist. And somehow I found a way, I think, so far, like the open, just so far. And I think that's probably what I would think 99.9% of the creatives feel like, is so far it's going good, and then anything could derail me.
Sure.
But I think that also my higher purpose is that I want to drive the narrative of what my morals and values. And it's not to impose them on people, but it's just to say, hey, that's not like what I see in the media is not exactly how I feel as a person. But I will communicate that in a different way. I won't scream and shout and complain and be very extremist. I'll just through my work communicate like how I feel like. And it's more specific than just be nice. I think it's more specific. I think it's really understanding perspectives.
Do you believe that maybe it's also the duty of anyone that decides, because it's not a must. No, nobody tells you that you need to be on social media. Nobody tells you that you need to be a creator or do something. But if you choose to do that, isn't it part of the job also to share your perspective? And in a way, if you do that with integrity, and we might also disagree in some points, but if we do it in a constructive manner, there is growth, even if it's confrontational. That's what I mean.
You know, we're an interesting part of the globe where confrontation and is not embedded in our culture, and certainly that's not how I was raised. So it is counter to how I feel, and so that does mean that my voice doesn't necessarily rise to the top as quickly as somebody else's. If you were to say like, I hate this, I hate that.
Sure.
We see that in articles, and I've worked at SCMP, and they don't edit too much, but they do edit it, and it is, and at least they're, now we'll say they are very balanced, but there is a pointing, and I've written op-ed pieces where there is a pointing to your work. So,
but then if we go down that route, we are, to me, it's a paradox, because from one side, you need to be super cautious and there is a lot of editing. On the other side, you see this very pushy media that is all about populism or drama, because that sells. Now, those are the clickbaits, and it's all a disaster. AI is going to kill us all, or it's always this tension building. Rather than, if I recall, a couple of proper journalists that were reporting on a fact. They were reporting on a scene. They say, okay, this is what's happening. I'm not saying this is good or bad. That's not my place. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. I'm just going to be unbiasedly tell the story. And that is becoming more and more rare.
Can anyone not be biased, honestly?
But let me because just say, we are human, but on the other side, that's your job, right? To be as impartial as you can be.
Especially if you're at a news, if you're at a news organization, a highly regarded news organization, that is your job. Absolutely. And I think certainly there is a deficit in voices that need to be heard, that are a little bit more balanced. And again, that's why I'm here. That's why I put myself out there. It's not because I have this ego and I want to tell everyone how to do things. It's just that there aren't enough people who have like a middle ground. It's okay. We don't have to argue about this. Let's have a beer or something. Let's talk about it. And this is about reaching too. I think like we can be in our echo chambers, but there's a reason why I do action. Is because I think that's very universal. And it's not that I can't do dramatic. It's not that I haven't reached down that, but I think that you'll reach more people that way. And you might actually reach people who have never left the place that they're from.
Sure. So in a way, you are doing that we were discussing before. Now you are guiding your audience through a wonder journey, although is a passionate and high density and high stakes journey.
Right? Sure. If you look at the service of, let's say, my most recent movie, Age of Recon, which is an action movie with Chuck Norris, right? It's like, you wouldn't get the fact that I wrote this during the pandemic, and that it was a lot of my feelings of angst that I was being coerced on a lot of things and forced into positions of, let's say, taking vaccines. And it doesn't take a position, but it does sort of like hint at like the struggle of the conflict of that. And it reverts back to Nolan, which is like the decision making of who, if you watch it, who is he going to save? Is he going to save Colonel, or he's going to save the person that they're sent on this mission to find? And so you find out in the movie, but a lot of that stuff is probably lost by most people.
It's the podcast.
It's a very simple, like, the through line is very simple. Mission, Marines go and they discover this unknown being. Like, you could apply that to anybody else, but then again, like that's sort of where I get to sprinkle in my feelings.
There is a topic that we talked about, ego, as an actor, as a producer, as somebody that is doing a lot of your own work. How do you deal with rejection and criticism?
You can look online. Like it hasn't been pretty for me, but I keep making movies and they keep on getting on major platforms. So I think it's always hard. I think sometimes, or a lot of times, the person doesn't like what I have to say and they see right into it, and it pisses them off, and then they'll write something. So I've looked at stuff that has been written about me, and it's very personal. It's not like objective. It's not like a Disney movie where people are like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? And because I don't have this shell, like when I was at Google or CNN, I could walk around, hand my card, and no one's gonna like mess with me. But because I'm this own entity, like you can try to take me down. But in a way, it's driving. Like I've taken snapshots. I'm like, who is this person who wrote about me? Who wrote this? And then I look at them on Instagram. I'm like, ooh, this is because I was a nerd in college. Sorry, a nerd throughout. And growing up, I was like, oh, this is the type of guy I would have been like friends with in like 8th grade. And then I won't go further on that, but it's more you see that and you're like, oh, okay. Now I look at one of the first people that wrote about me, Christopher Freeland. At the time, she was a New York Times journalist. If anyone knows, she is now like in Canada. She's like a huge, like she was up for prime minister. But at that time when they interviewed me, I had no idea. We were just in the audience, she interviewed, and we talked a lot about things like tackling capitalism and identity and things like that. You know, you really have to, I think nowadays you just really have to look at who's talking, who's shouting, and then.
But I'm more interested in your own processing of that, because it happened to me and I'm, it happened to me just because I tried to do something and to me was like, I have 2 followers, but it still happened. Most of the time, it also happens from people that you don't expect and that are also close to you, and you're like, dude, call me. And then it's just this act of, I want to just take a shot,
tear you down.
No, it's literally just like swinging at you, but you would never do that in person, which is, but let's share this perspective. I'll give you my perspective.
Okay.
It's part of the game because you decided to get out there. So it's your choice. You could have been a bank clerk if you wanted to, or a statistician, but it's part of the game. So you, to a certain extent, you accept that. But I believe that whatever we do, most of the time, it's also personal. And although you have this mindset of continuous learning, prototyping, and that you will never reach perfect. The only thing that you should aim is good. or not good, sorry, better than your former self. How do you process that? Because sometimes it's uncomfortable.
With every movie, we release a movie every 2 years, so I've just come to expect it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the same thing. Like this podcast, people will listen to it, and then there'll be people who are like, "Oh, what's he doing?
Yeah, sure.
Why?" And then, I could do better than that. People become monsters online as well. It's because anyone has a voice,
True.
right? And they are probably not. Some are not as educated as you are. Some don't have the life experience that you have. So you kind of have to give them a little discount too, as well. Some of these things for them are an opportunity for them to express themselves as well. And one of my investors said to me, he said, you don't want apathy. So
Sure.
if you're getting that type of feedback, you're doing something right.
You do want
Right?
This is an old, both in design and in the arts. You want to be polarizing, no? If you are vanilla, nobody.
Absolutely, yeah. So just come to the table, be like, people are going to criticize me. My friends are going to think differently of me. My parents are not going to be exactly thrilled or they don't understand it. What is a podcast or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that's how my family is, but I think that is something to be expected of anybody. Especially, again, because we're shifting through this culture, this time of technology where it's happening so fast that you just can't keep up. So, yeah.
Talking about podcasts, you have a very, very interesting podcast. Still sci-fi AI driven. What's your talk to us a little bit about that? And
Oh, listen, I have two. I have one started is it's called Be Super. It's really about
Okay.
your
Person,
mindset.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and I had access to some thought leaders, and I would say access to celebrities. So I interview them, and it's my opportunity to interview them and talk to them, and it's my business school because I didn't go to business school. And the same thing with Wit. That's about AI. So I'm writing my next. Actually, it's written. So I when I started, I didn't touch AI. I was like, oh, I'm going to be old school. As I have been, I haven't had this tool before, but I probably, if the movie has a topic about AI, then I should probably know something about it. And what better way is just to go to people who are, I didn't want to go to so high, nor would they take my interview like a Zuckerberg and ask him, what do you think about the future of AI? I really want to go to people who are like, how's this going to affect you?
Sure.
How's your life going to change? And the perspective was never to, I mean, much like your podcast, is never to just try to get views. It's more my own personal understanding and, to quote my wife, curiosity. And that's how it evolved. And I consistently put it into my schedule just to do that. And for anyone who's listening out there, it's not the shell or the person that you see here today is definitely not the person that you saw 12 years ago.
Sure.
And I also use it as a form of practice, a form of experimentation.
It's hard work to put yourself out there in whatever form.
Yeah, especially as a filmmaker, because everyone expects, especially now, you can have terrible writing and production value very high.
True.
And so I've just evolved into the fact that, and again, it's the content, like what's inside ultimately matters. And I have that, I wear that on my sleeve.
Do you have a movie that you fall in love or let's say that actually started the spark and you were like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing?
You mean about my podcast or
No,
like
movie.
any movie that inspired me? Oh, there's tons. I always talk about King's Speech as being one of my favorite movies just because I was crying on the plane watching it. And I think I'm a different auteur, let's say, of film, in that I just kind of watched movies with my dad and they'd be like anything. I didn't come into it as like watching all the most critically acclaimed movies. I came into it, oh, let's watch a Schwarzenegger movie or a Sylvester Stallone movie. And I'm not sure nowadays, like there is that as much of a place for a guy like me, but that's why I continue to make my movies. Maybe that's why Chuck Norris came out of retirement for me, is because I think like at the end of the day too, like that's the person who's I'm presenting. That's the script I'm presenting.
Okay.
That's my stuff.
How old is he now?
He's 84 or 85. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how was that?
Yeah. It was like dream come true, unexpected, didn't have any kind of connections or anything like that. Like I'm totally like, even Hong Kong, I didn't have any family other than my wife and her immediate family. So connections to investors and the film industry too is completely new to me. So I've had to build that up over time. And yeah, but so reaching him was pretty amazing. It was a dream come true. And I think about those moments every day because he is a true legend. He's real. He represents himself how a good person should. And he was very kind. And he said the first thing he said to me was, "Oh, you remind me of myself when I was making movies." And a lot of people don't know that Chuck Norris he's one of the he has his own production company. Texas Walker Ranger was under his production. Yeah, it's 9 seasons. And he's the guy who took the mantle from Charles Bronson. So that's why, like, the executive I was working with, he was kind of like, he's like, oh, yeah, like I want to meet him. And then there's another executive like, oh, can you have him record this for me? This little shout out. And I'm like, okay, I'll try to do that when we're trying to make our movie. But yeah, magical. And yeah, I'd like to say that I've lived my dream, and now it's more about how can I really drive the narrative going forward with my work, if I can.
If you had to, let's say, give an advice to a young filmmaker today, with all the ups and down difficulties, but also opportunities, because you could eventually do an interesting short film on YouTube and make it viral. What would you what would be, let's, I don't want to make something, what are the three things that you should tell him? Like the absolute, be
Wow.
careful of
Wow.
these three things.
Actually, honestly, like I have been mentoring has actually been not something that I thought that I'd be do, but and I always felt like, oh man, you know, you have to reach a certain level of Jedi-ness to reach that mentorship level. But it actually has been a part of the income that I make, but not intentionally, right? You
Sure.
once you do one thing, then it leads to another. That's how you have to work as a creative, and I'm sure that's a lot for other people too as well. So I think sometimes people just want to hear that it's going to be okay. And that's what my dad used to tell me, is it's going to be okay. They just want to know that it's all right to do this. And and it's not going to, it really doesn't matter like in the grand scheme of things. I think, man, you asked me for three things. Jeez.
Come on. One is gonna be okay. I'm gonna help you.
Number two is, well, and I'm different, right? Because I'm a person who had to work through overcoming self-confidence issues and stuff like that. I took public speaking classes. I have a coach. When I first had my first movie, like one of my mentors said, "Oh, you here's a coach." He gave me a coach and said, "Work with him." And we gave this big speech in Causeway Bay. Actually, it was in front of 300 people from Bloomberg. Obviously, I would tell you like get a mentor, but I think that happens a lot, and so it really matters who, because if they don't align with the values that you think will that are if they're not really good, then or they don't have that sort of guidance, then you can also get lost very quickly as well.
Can I give my piece of advice on top of that?
Yeah.
Before you find a mentor, identify what are the real questions you need to ask him.
Okay, there you go. Is that my number 3? Did I get out of here? Did I get out of this class? No.
As you like.
Yeah, I have to represent my alma mater, Cornell, and say that I think education is certainly like at the top. Like I think I always get this question from parents that are like, "Oh, should my kid go to film school, or because they want to, or should they just get a science degree or whatever, or should?" And I'm like, nowadays, I'm like, man, well, what is the purpose of college these days? And can I get all my information from Poe if we're in Hong Kong? So that I think that poses an interesting question. But my stance on education is that this is the formative years of your life where you'll meet people that you'll really identify with, and you will also it's your proving ground. I definitely emphasize education as that, but it's more about your self growth. And if it's at a film school because you already know and you've been through that, some people are so fast. They're so mature right now. Then I would say then you may not even need to go to college. But if you need that sort of personal growth, do that too as well.
I'm
What?
an educator, so I have
Yeah.
my own. I think the value of education today, it's even more important than before, because knowledge is only one component of education. So the value of going to college or to school or to have a group of people is about developing your social and personal skills. So
He said it better than me, right?
no, I get this question all the time.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
because-
Yeah.
and the problem is that a lot of students nowadays, although they go for the piece of paper or for the badge, they don't develop that, because even the education, this is a problem that I also feel part of, in the sense that the educational system needs to evolve, needs to change, needs to become something different that it is now. It's not people sitting in a row and listening to one truth and saying, by the way, because I have a gray hair, you have to listen to me. No, it's about interaction. It's about discovery. It's about, actually, I would say this, that the value of college is the sandbox, is the fact that it is it should be a very safe place to fail. No, so that place is where you can fail, and you can fail safely, because you can develop your own skills.
Yeah.
And oftentimes this doesn't happen in canonical education, because then failure, you get the bad grade.
Yeah. So I have a question for you then too.
Okay.
Which came up.
Interesting.
You guys are gonna love this because
Never interview a podcaster. This is what
yeah, no,
happens.
but this is your realm, man.
Yeah.
And I think
Go.
I'll let you answer. So you have this student who maybe wants to go to this liberal arts college, but then maybe their potential is so high that they could go to an Ivy League or Stanford or something that the parents want. And so it's not that the liberal arts college is in a top college that doesn't have a name and it's like a great place for them, but they can get into Harvard, right? What would you do? Well, how would you tackle that? And everyone's looking. I'm curious myself.
Okay. So the first real question is, how successful are you going to be at Harvard? Because if you are going to go to Harvard and you're going to be on the bottom 20 percentile, this is not from me, this comes from Malcolm Gladwell, by the way, in an interesting book, which is, if you are going to be a bottom performer, and not necessarily because you're not smart enough, but maybe because you don't care enough. Because if your love is for filmmaking and you're going to go and study statistics and you are super smart, probably you will get by, but you're going to be in the bottom 20 percentile. You're never going to have the grit, the drive, the hunger to be in the top one. And so you're going to be miserable because it's Harvard or Stanford or any Ivy League. You're going to probably become dissociated by the people that have that drive. So socially speaking, might not be a great option. I'm not sure. And if we are talking 2026, we are talking 2030 when you graduate. The real question, which I don't necessarily know, is how much that badge is valuable in 4 years' time. So unfortunately, today, that badge, the Ivy League, still matters a lot. But I also had the opportunity to talk with a lot of very interesting entrepreneurs, very high-end businessmen, and they say, if I get a potential partner or employee from Harvard and they're dumb, I'm not going to hire them either way. I'm not going to share my business either way. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, today is more interesting and more important what you do. And if you build in public, I don't think any venture capital, let's say venture capital, just because you have a co-founder that is from Harvard, would give you 1 million more if the product is not good. But if you have the super nerdy Derek that can code like a master and he's 22 because he's been coding since he was 15, that will get you the extra 5 mil, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it's about what you're going to excel at. And that, because everything, every pursuit, everything that you do, it's hard work. And the reality is that there is a threshold of pain and suffering that you have to go through. And when you do it on something that you like, or at least you enjoy, it's a little bit easier. It's not easy. It's a little bit easier. It just digests a little bit better.
Yeah. My own personal to build on that is building a frictionless environment for yourself. So if you're submerging yourself into that, you've inspired me on that. I feel like it's really putting yourself in a situation where you're happy and comfortable.
We have frictionless doesn't mean, though, I want to specify, it doesn't mean that you have to choose the easy path.
Yes.
So the tricky, let me attach one point. If you give up Harvard, you better be the number one in that film school. Let's put it this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Derek, thank you so much, because we ran a little bit high on time. Last one bit. What is our responsibility as creatives? Same question.
Oh man.
Well, you did say it. If we can collect, let's do the recap. So you said, bring out our own voice, identify mentorship and what we really care about. Try to understand what is the perspective of other people if we have to face rejection or face criticism.
Yeah.
So trying
Yeah.
to have, I would name it radical empathy.
I like that. I like that.
As an interesting part. Did I forget anything?
No, but I appreciate the time for stalling so I can come up with some sort of eloquent answer that I can only speak to my own personal pursuit. And what gets me up in the morning is that I chose to be on this journey. I think my parents told me, you decided to do that. That's how and everyone around me, is your choice. But what is that? What is the meaning of that too? And then I realized that to reiterate, I represent something that the fear inside of you that says, oh, that person over there, they're more handsome, they're smarter than me, they're everywhere. Like, how could I ever be like that? And I think I struggle with that. I wanted to stay in that kind of comfort zone and safety zone for a while, and but I grinded it out, and then somehow people around me offered help and advice and investment, and hey, why don't you try it out? And including my wife, I told her when I was 23, is like, by the way, while we're working in the city, while we're making a great income, by the way, I think I want to be an actor someday. And she didn't bat an eye. She was just like, okay, And I've had other girlfriends before too, prior to that. So I think
we don't talk
and obviously they're not. I didn't marry them because that's what I saw in her very early on was, oh, this was someone that would support me in any environment, any type of. There weren't any requirements other than be a good person and see the potential in me. And I think a lot of people have done that, so I'm grateful for that. So a lot of that is just returning that gratitude. Awesome. And I think if you operate that way, then good things come naturally as you be grateful for the moment that we have here and the people that show up for you who may not even know me, like just look me up on the internet. It's like, oh, this might be interesting. Absolutely. Like, then I'm grateful for that. And
return grace.
Try.
Derek, thank you very much. This is Creative Leaders at the House. I'm Gianluca Cinquepalmi. Thank you to Soho House for hosting us. And thank you for that good studio to taking this wonderful recording. If we want to find you, Instagram?
I'm on LinkedIn professionally in terms of just the producing aspect. And I'm on Instagram as well. Yeah, those are probably the two major. I have a website and I have a podcast. I'm on YouTube as well, so you can check out my podcast. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And to the next time.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.